All right, so far so good. Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar, Navigating the IT Services Horizon. I'm Jill, I'm an account manager at PAC. Thank you all for joining us today. Before we kick off, I'm gonna have some technical details that you should know about. First, all participants will be muted during the webinar. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If we run out of time, we'll reach out to answer your questions directly, or feel free to contact us. Please note that the webinar is being recorded, and the recording along with the slide deck will be available afterwards. For today's agenda, there we go. Sorry. We'll start with our Chief Analyst, Christophe Chalon, who will give us some insight on the top IT services providers in 2023, and he will provide us with an update on the market. Following Christophe, we'll hear from Joachim Hackmann, our Principal Analyst and Head of the BAS practice. He'll delve into our RADAR leaders in SAP services in Europe and Germany 2024, and share PAC's insights on SAP Business Technology Platform. Last but not least, our Principal Analyst, Frank Naujoks, will analyze SAP's AI offerings and strategy. Now, without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker, Chief Analyst Christophe Chalon. Christophe, over to you.
Thank you, Jill. So, I will take over the hand. Can you give me the hand? Today I will start with an overview on an update on our market scenario. And then I will move to the top IT service provider 23. First, very shortly, what do you see here? You see our growth scenario for the last 2 years and for this year. Clearly, we see and we differentiate here between Europe and North America. We see we had an extreme growth in 2022, by the way, also in 2021. There was a post-COVID catch-up effect. There was a digitization boosted by the COVID to make businesses more resilient. Also, the inflation and consequently the rates were boosted by the Ukraine war. And by comparison, we had a massive slowdown taking place in the course of 2023, starting in the USA end of 22 and beginning of 23, and expanded to Europe in the course of 2023. Therefore, you see really the very strong slowdown of growth in the US. By comparison, the Europe was a bit more stable. And for sure, this is not fully representative of the market. So we had, looking at the major vendors, growth half between H2 22 and H1 23, and again between H1 23 and H2 23. And again, so sorry, this was not fully representative of the market, as we had some substantial inorganic growth in 21 and 22, not in 23. Nevertheless, we saw the market slowing down massively, especially in the US. And right now we are more in the pace of H2 23, so a slow growth. We expect the recovery to start earlier in the US at the end of the coming quarter, so June or July, and a bit later in Europe, probably not before the end of the third quarter, so September or October. And again, this explains our cautious growth scenario for 2024. There are still massive discrepancies between the countries. For example, if we look at Europe, Eastern European countries take advantage right now of the strong delocalization strategy of Western European and in particular German companies, but also from investment from Asian companies. Besides that, we see Spain or Belgium expected to perform better than Germany or the UK. However, as we will discuss in the next slides, the situation is by far less homogeneous than it used to be. So within the same country, we see some industries generating growing markets, while some other represent shrinking markets. We see some vendors doing very well, some other underperforming. If we look behind the figures, so looking at the major segment of the market. So quite a few of you know already this slide showing the main market segments with some market sizing and growth rates elements for Europe, which we, by the way, cover with our city clusters. So we see a massive slowdown of growth in the digital customer engagement segment, massive in 23, following overinvestment in 2020, 21, 22. And so typically services around Salesforce or Adobe, and we expect a further slight slowdown in 2024. We saw a slight slowdown of growth in OT and industrial IT, so rather resilient market in 23. First, because companies have to further invest in factory automation to reduce the production cost and raise their resiliency. Also because product manufacturers, for example, car manufacturers, have to invest in smart products to remain competitive. But we see right now a strong pressure on budgets, and quite a few companies are postponing investments or relocating in cheaper countries. Therefore, we expect here a slight slowdown of growth in 2024. We have a similar pressure on budget in the ERP and back office segment. So companies have to prioritize their investment. We had here a substantial slowdown in 23. We expect a further slight slowdown in 24, with one exception, therefore the green arrow, which is SAP, and it's a big one because the SAP market or SAP generates a 33 billion euro services market in Europe in 24. So when this market is growing, it's quite interesting, and thanks to the current S4 migration wave, we expect this market growing nearly 2-digit in 24. We saw massive slowdown of growth in the cloud business in 23, with growth around hyperscaler halving through remaining over 20%. It was still close to 25% in H1, down still over 15% in H2. We expect the pace will not recover in H1, but we expect a slight acceleration in the second half of the year. Besides SAP, the real exception in this slide with the green arrow is analytics and AI, and within this segment, clearly it's Gen AI. So it's still a small segment. However, it is literally exploding. In Europe, we estimated Gen AI services generated less than 50 million euro in 22, but 700 million in 23, and we expect 3 billion for this year. By comparison, in the US, we expect 10 billion. So right now we are still more in the consulting and assessment phase. So however, we see millions of small assignments adding to substantial volumes, and we expect in 24 that we will see more and more real implementations. Going further, growth in cybersecurity has remained quite resilient, thanks to the increasing threat level in 23, and also we expected a slight acceleration in 24 because of new regulations. Yet here also we see budget pressure forcing companies to consolidate their security solutions landscape. So flat in terms of growth, so still growing clearly 2-digit, but no acceleration this year. We were expecting a slight acceleration in sustainability because of new regulation, but here also we see that both companies and also authorities are softening their approach due to the tough economical environment. So this is for my market update, and now moving to the vendor ranking. So the first one, our top 10 IT services worldwide. We published it on our city portal some weeks ago. We published a blog post on our portal and on LinkedIn with over 175 impressions. So a lot of interest for this one. I will just make a few comments today. So you see here the market share of the top 10 vendors. Just talking a bit about the growth. So Accenture grew 5% in local currency last year. By comparison, it was 23% a year before, of which 18% organic. IBM 1%. IBM Consulting was a 6%, and in 22 it was 11%. TCS 5.5% in local currency in 23. By comparison, 17% the year before. Deloitte, one of the main winners last year with 14% in local currency. By comparison, it was 20% the year before. Here, our new entrant in the top 5, Entity Data. So following the integration of Entity Limited. This is an interesting story. While IBM decided to spin off Kyndryl and Ethos to split the company in Eviden and Tech Foundations, Entity Data decided for the contrary, with the aim to develop synergies between their infrastructure and the application business. On a pro forma basis, they grew 5% in 23, by comparison, 11% in 22. Capgemini is now our number 6. They grew 4.5% in local currency, by comparison, 17% in the year before, of which 15% organic. We decided this year to add some rankings, including also management consulting and also engineering services. Using these rankings, Capgemini remains in the top 5 worldwide. I will now move to our top EMEA, which is the news of the day. We just published this ranking today. And so looking at the top 5, first of all, we have a quite stable top 5, so no change in the order. Accenture remaining number 1 with 5% growth in Europe, by comparison 28% in 2022. And as I said before, with some all the vendors have some growth countries and some more difficult markets. So growth was quite strong in France, in Germany, in Italy, quite difficult in the UK. Capgemini grew a bit faster, so 6%, comparison 16% last year, with a strong growth in Germany and UK, with a moderate growth in France and Netherlands, and a more difficult market in the Nordics. IBM grew 1% last year. So this is a total IT services. So if we just take IBM Consulting, it's rather 5%, with a strong growth in Germany and the UK, rather weak in Italy, in Benelux and Nordics. Tata with 7% growth, 16% last year. Last year, I want to say in 2022, with a very strong UK business and a weaker market in Europe. Ethos with minus 2%, but a slight growth, organic growth. So there was a strong growth or good growth in Eviden, especially in Germany, while they were shrinking in Tech Foundation business. But besides the organic growth, there were some disposals of some businesses like Italy and some ramp down of the UK BPO business. Number 6 is new. Deloitte, they won 2 places with an impressive growth in Germany and Italy, moderate growth in France, Netherlands, the UK. So 12% growth in 23 by comparison, 19 in 22. And DXC still shrinking, so in fact very much because of the GBS business, which is the pendant to Eviden at Atos. So sorry, GBS growing, and GIS, which is a pendant to Tech Foundation, shrinking. Kyndryl, which lost 2 places, mainly because of a portfolio baselining. They were more or less flat otherwise. Soprasteria, which is the fastest growing company in this top 15 with 14% growth last year, 14% growth overall, 7% organic. They won 1 place, more moderate organic growth in France, but strong thanks to the acquisitions. Strong growth in UK, Nordics and Spain, and strategic acquisition in Benelux, Ordina, which will change their position in 24. CGI, 6% growth, 12% last year. Strong in France, not only organic, strong in UK and Germany, moderate growth in Netherlands and Sweden. Infosys with 8% growth, 33% growth in calendar year 22, very strong growth in Germany. Then PwC, newcomer in this top 15, they are surfing on the S4 wave across Europe, 11% growth. Number 13, we have entity data for the first time with entity limited consolidated with a solid growth in Europe of 10%. Also for the first time in this ranking, we decided to put together T-Systems and Deutsche Telekom as the two units increasingly work together in multiple areas like cloud or security, with a strong growth in Germany and Austria and very strong growth in Spain. And finally, number 15, lost 2 places, Cognizant, 2% growth. They will probably lose rank 15 to EY in 2024. Before I give the mic to Joachim, so who is knocking on the door of the top 15? We see EY, like PwC, surfing on the S4 wave. We see Vipro, and which lost 2 places in 2023, but still not far from the top 15. Fujitsu lost a few places last year, but we see this business strongly accelerating in Japan with the new Uvance offering. And then we have Orange, KPMG, and HCL. So all these companies are close to the top 15 and will certainly fight for entering this top in 2024. And now I will give the hand to Joachim.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation. I love this part where you were referring to SAP. It's still growing fast because I'm responsible for the SAP business, among others, at PAC. Yeah, a warm welcome from my side as well. What I will be doing in the next couple of minutes is giving you a short, brief introduction into PAC's radar with the title Leaders in SAP Services in Europe and Germany 2024. We have started this radar around about mid of 2023 with, we have invited around about 70 service providers to participate. And the evaluation phase started in around about November last year. And the publication of the radar results took place in this February, beginning of February. And with a press release from PAC side and with some service provider that have started their communications about SAP radar as well. Okay, just short introduction to the radar. Actually, the radar is a benchmarking tool which brings transparency into the service provider market. And the SAP radar in particular is we publish every 2 years. And for the first time, this time with an European scope. All other radars before were focused on Germany for some historical reasons because the radar was developed and created in Germany, but this time with a European scope. However, the SAP radar is very mature. We have a lot of experience with the radar. We have a really comprehensive self-disclosure question of the service providers, and we have a customer satisfaction assessment as well. And to emphasize or to underline the goal of the aim of the radar, this is actually a tool for user companies where user companies can use this tool for the service provider selections. Actually, the radar graphs, as shown here on the right side, are much better known because this is the result of the radar we share in public, and a lot of service providers share the results, the radar graphs as well in the public. But the user tools is not that well known, but it's an important tool as well. And this in this current radar, we have evaluated a total of 22 service providers, including all the top 10 EMEA service providers of PIC's top 10 list, plus with the exception of SAP. SAP is part of the top 10 list, but we did not evaluate SAP in this radar because SAP follows a little bit different business model and services, plus several other further international companies and some SME-focused service providers. We have evaluated all of these providers based on around about 100 individual criteria. We can create several radars from this catalog of criteria by weighting, selecting specific radar for specific radar type. For example, when we do a CNSI radar, of course, we weight project-related criteria much higher than operational related criteria. So in total, we have 16 radars in this radar process. We created 16 radars in this process, 8 for Europe, for the European market, and 8 for the German market. Few words to the different types of radars. You see this round radars on the right side. The round radars in general cover more specific topics such as CNSI, such as application management, hosting, or overall radars. And the square ones are more focused on specific topics such as S/4HANA, such as CX, innovations or sustainability, and so on. Okay. As I already mentioned, we have 2 outcomes, 2 results from the radars. On the left side, you see in this case the radar, the innovations, the so-called PAC innovation radar for S/4HANA related CNSI services, and you can see the list of providers that have participated in this radar. And on the right-hand side, on the right side, you can see the user tool. This is an Microsoft Excel-based dynamic tool that is made available exclusively to user companies. And it helps IT decision makers to find out which providers fits best for their specific needs by weighting the criteria I mentioned before to their specific requirements and demands. And this gives them a list of which providers probably fits best for them, for example, for in S/4HANA migration projects. This user tool is not that well known because it's used mostly internally by user companies. And we have a cooperation with the German-speaking SAP user group, the DSAG, to distribute this tool among their members. And as part of the cooperation with the DSAG, we have, before we have started the radar process, we have a discussion with selected user DSAG members about create or the updates, the questionnaire, and the self-assessment. And in return, we grant the DSAG members a discount on the purchase of this tool. So this brings me already to the last slide of my radar-related presentation. Here you see some key findings from our radar process. As I mentioned before, we gather a lot of information during the radar process from service providers as well as from users companies. And of course, we do an analysis of this information on an anonymous way to find out patterns and trends, what's going on in the SAP market. I don't want to go into detail into all of these key findings. All of the participants of this webinar will receive the slides afterwards. And for CITSI customers, the radar reports with detailed analysis of the key findings are available on the CITSI platform. Just one note on this key finding slide is that we have learned from the radar process, from the information gathering process, that BTP becomes much more important, or is becoming much more important for service providers as well as for user companies. What we've learned is that, for example, service providers are ramping up their capabilities, their resources in BTP, and the user companies in turn, on the other side, are a little bit unsure how to deal with the BTP. And this brings me to my next part, to the next part of my presentation, and I will dive a little deeper into the business technology platform from SAP. Let's start with a short introduction to the BTP. It was introduced by SAP around about 3 years ago, and it's a kind of umbrella term for, at that time, already existing products from SAP. In general, the BTP covers 4 functional areas. It's the analytics part with the most notable product, SAP Analytics Cloud. It's the database and data management part with HANA database, with master data management solutions, and with the data sphere solution offerings in it. The third part is the application development part, which contains, among others, the development environment Steampunk, or as it's called nowadays, SAP ABAP Cloud, and for example, the low-code, no-code offerings of SAP Build. And last but not least, the so-called intelligent technologies area of the BTP. It's, in my opinion, the at least advanced, at least important part of the BTP at the moment, but this might change in the future the more SAP is emphasizing or investing in innovations. It might be become more important in the future. So next slide is I just want to give you an overview or an idea what the market situation looks like in which the BTP currently appears. What we see on the left side is that we see a high demand in S/4HANA related services, as Christoph already mentioned. We have strong growth rates all over the world and lots of countries in many verticals. And all in all, S/4HANA is currently tying up a lot of resources because service providers are ramping up their capabilities, and user companies are investing a lot of money in their S/4HANA migration. But this is a special boom, and this will end in the coming years. Of course, there will be demand for S/4HANA services as well in the next year, but this won't disappear. But it will more focus. The more S/4HANA migrations are completed, the more focus will shift to more custom specific extensions and so on. So all in all, S/4HANA, the S/4HANA service market will become kind of normal market with normal growth rates in the future. And at the same time, we are seeing a change in application landscapes. User companies are moving away from these monolithic architectures, as we know it from the ERP situation a couple of years ago with R/3 and ECC in the center. And they are moving more towards a composable architecture, a composable distributed architecture, with business applications are linked via APIs or via an integration platform. And in this new environment, S/4HANA does not have the central strategic role as R/3 and ECC had in the past. And S/4HANA is just one of many best-of-breed business applications, among others, in this new composable architecture. And against this question, of course, against this background, of course, the question arises: what will be the next hot topic in the SAP services market? What will come after S/4HANA? And if you ask SAP, the answer is clearly BTP. SAP's claim is that BTP is to become this new central platform in corporate IT around which all other solutions are grouped. Means even standard application from other providers and customer-centric, customer-specific extension should be integrated with BTP. To this end, BTP provides, for example, integration services, as already mentioned, and a common security layer, common data model, and an integrated process landscape. All in all, SAP has prepared everything to establish BTP as a core, as a central platform in user companies and user enterprise IT, the enterprise IT of user companies. However, the customers do not at the moment follow this approach. What you see on the left side is the result of our CXO survey in 2023. Round about 76% of the companies surveyed do not have BTP in place at that moment. Yeah? And we have asked for their investment plans as well, and this does not really look any better. So, however, I think it's important to say that this is a snapshot, and at that time, the BTP as a brand umbrella as an umbrella brand might be not that well known. And I'm pretty much sure that all of the user companies that we have surveyed are using components, specific components of the BTP, like Analytics Cloud, like integration services or steampunk environments. But all in all, the brand BTP and the approach of SAP to bring it in the center of the user environments is not that well accepted among user companies. By the way, we have done this CXO service in 2020, and we will do another one in 2024. We'll start soon. If there's someone to participate this CXO survey, the next user CXO survey, please feel free to approach me or your key account. So all in all, will SAP succeed with the BTP, with its BTP plans? There are some factors that speak in favor of this, and there are some factors that speak against it. First of all, in general, SAP has a very loyal SAP community. What we learned again among others from our CXO service is that the companies won't go away from SAP. They stick with SAP ERP systems, even if they have to do an SAP S/4HANA migration, and even if this migration gives them a good opportunity to opt for a different provider, but they stick with SAP. Furthermore, SAP itself is the biggest BTP user. SAP is currently starting to refactoring and to replatforming all of its own cloud solutions like SuccessFactors, like Ariba, Fieldglass, based on the BTP. And of course, if a user company is focused on a SAP central or SAP homogeneous SAP environment, BTP offers the best integration and innovation, best integration capabilities and the best access to innovation. And last but not least, SAP's ecosystem, all the service providers use the BTP for integration purposes in their client projects, but as well to develop their vertical extensions, their vertical solutions, user-specific extensions. So BTP is all in all very well established among SAP and SAP's ecosystems. However, on the user side, looks a little bit different. BTP is considered too complex, as it includes too many functions that are not really required for the companies, for a lot of companies, and it is considered too expensive. There are always and repeatedly discussions around the licensing of the BTP. It's a little bit intransparent. People complain about the high cost and the uncalculatable cost, because in some cases BTP licenses are based on transaction fees, on transaction services. And the competitor landscape is another very interesting factor here, because BTP faces really strong competition. For example, in analytics and a low-code, no-code, Microsoft Power Platform is a very good option, is a very strong competitor. When we look at the integration, application integration part, IBM has a good integration platform. Boomi has an integration platform. We have Software AG on TIBCO. And for example, in development, where SAP is positioned itself as ABAP Cloud or Steampunk, we have the development platforms of the hyperscalers that are very attractive to SAP clients as well. So all in all, it looks a little bit unsure if SAP will succeed. And probably the innovation part might play a key role in the future, because SAP has announced that innovation will made available to clients prior, first of all, via the BTP. And of course, SAP has not a good track record in innovations, but probably this might change in the future, because SAP has announced to invest a lot of money in Gen AI and SAP, and probably SAP will do a great job in this new segment that they will succeed in a Gen AI space. And this brings me to our next presentation from Frank, who will give you some insights into SAP's innovation, artificial intelligence strategy. Frank, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's ask Gen AI whether SAP is successful or not. Well, maybe next year. My object has been first to discover correct principles and then to suggest their practical development. This quote from James Prescott Joule might have been, I'm not sure, but it might have been the reason why SAP chose his last name to brand his latest and greatest Gen AI offering, Joule. And talking about practical development, I think when we look a little bit more academically on the development from static reports, what happened, looking back in the past to recommendations, what should I do? We are pretty much in the middle of somewhere between decision support and decision automation, definitely since Gen AI came into the business life for, well, talking about SAP since roughly half a year, when they first came out with their business AI approaches using Gen AI as well. So it's all about eliminating manual processes into decision automation. And that's a lot of work to do. That's a lot of technical partnerships behind it. It's not SAP alone. There's from Aleph Alpha, Microsoft, Google, NVIDIA just announced, I think 2 days ago, last day, new partnerships going into hardware. So there are a lot of people involved to come up with this approach towards business AI with Joule as a co-pilot, helping for the everyday life of the SAP user. And then Joachim already mentioned a business technology platform playing a crucial role for the AI foundation, and that all to flavor the SAP offerings from Cloud ERP, HCM, spend management, CRM, with as much business AI as possible. These are the offerings. Are they a little bit late? Yes, on one hand, you might say so. On the other hand, I don't want too much hallucination on business decisions. That might be good for lyrics, but if I can avoid that for supply chain management decisions, I'm pretty happy with it. If they take a little bit more time for their approach to hit the world in there. But if I look especially at the Gen AI offering from SAP and figuring out the expected impact, SAP is doing a solid job. On one hand, they're in this blue and red segments with supply chain, manufacturing, HR, support there. But the impact is not as good as, for example, in parts that are expected impact is much higher, like software engineering. And if I look at Joachim's presentation and the S/4HANA migration reference, I would expect a lot more impact for positive impact as well on the customer side as on the side for consulting and system integrators there. If you come up with something from SAP side, like software engineering, transforming ABAP code from on-premise into S/4HANA, that would be something I would have liked much more. But if I look at the stock market, on the other hand, they're doing pretty good, and they may probably need something for phase 2. At least Microsoft is supposed to work on this ABAP migration tools. I would expect SAP to coming up with something that might be comparable, but that's really my silver bullet. That's what I'm kind of missing in the offering right now. They're solid job, absolutely fine, doing their homework on the supply chain, finance, home turf, but expected impact is much higher on the software engineering part, and kind of missing something there. Nevertheless, 24,000 customers already leverage SAP Business AI capabilities. That's what SAP claims. Sounds like a lot. They see Accenture, for example, could reduce the automatic cash processing time by 80%. Chobani, a cereals manufacturer, was able to realize around 75% reduction in time spent on expenses. So this is, as I said, the last slide, that's the homework. That's the kind of easy part that saves you a lot of time on one hand, but it's just small steps. And 24,000 people on the one hand sounds tremendous. SAP claims to be in the AI business for almost 10 years. And that's pretty good, 24,000. On the other hand, it's only 6% of the 400,000 customers they do have. So there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of untapped market there, a lot of, I expect a lot of projects shifting from POC stage. We see right now they are into productive stage, and that's something I expect at least at the end of the day. So I'm pretty curious what's coming up from our user survey starting in second quarter this year with a focus on SAP. We did, of course, a user survey last year asking about the investments in AI within the next 2 years. What makes me look kind of positive into the future, especially in the AI part, is that around 1/3 say we're looking into business applications, provide AI features. And if we talk as well to users as to system integrators and consulting companies, there's a lot of, as I said, POC going on, a lot of start trying to figure out what are the things to look at, what are the functions to invest in. Number one investment is training of the internal staff. We saw a lot of announcements as well on the SAP side, as well on the service provider side, and of course a lot of on the user side, training internal stuff that's going on there. It's going to be interesting to compare these numbers 23 with our survey results coming in hopefully in the next couple of weeks, months. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see some more investments into AI, because even if it's the real silver bullet might be missing from my point of view, and looking at the SAP, there's a lot of uncertainty about pricing and a lot of pressure to move into the SAP S/4HANA world, to use AI there. I think that there will be a lot of investments and at least POCs, and definitely some productive projects going on. That would be my couple of minutes of thoughts around AI, and going back to Jill.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Christoph, Joachim, and Frank, for your updates and insights. In case you missed the housekeeping rules in the beginning, because I saw some people raising their hands, please use the Q&A tool at the bottom. We will answer your questions right after I'm going to give you an update on our upcoming researches. Yes, so first off, our PAC innovation radar called AI-related services in Europe, Germany, and France. This radar is currently in preparation. It focuses on consulting, systems integration, and operational services, as well as some business operations services on AI. We will be sending out invitations to service providers in April, but if you are interested in participating, please contact Joachim directly. Also, as mentioned, we're going to have a European CXO survey on scaling AI. CXO leaders want to understand the key AI areas their peers are focusing on, such as generative and explainable AI, and how to adopt responsible AI tools and frameworks. Knowledge and practical experience of scaling AI, both technically and operationally, are relatively growing across Europe, and this study will provide clarity for both CXOs looking to adopt AI and service providers looking to provide engagement support. Last but not least, as Joachim mentioned, this is a new edition of the CXO survey from 2023, which Joachim has already mentioned. It focuses on the SAP S/4HANA migration plans of user companies in Europe. The framework of the question is already in place, and sponsors are invited to participate in the design of the final questionnaire. If you are interested, please contact your key account or me. So let's dive into Q&A session. I saw we already got some questions about. So we're gonna start with the question for Joachim. It was asked if the market growth figures already were adjusted for inflation. I think he meant inflation.
It's more a question for Christoph.
Okay, it was sent during your speech. I'm sorry. Christoph, you're on mute.
Apologize. All the figures that we provide includes are at in euro or in dollar or in the local currency, so it includes the impact of inflation. So there is some inflation, but there is some. Let's say we look more at the specific price development in the IT market, which is quite different from the inflation. Unfortunately, in the last 2 years, the rates did not increase as much as the inflation did. But yes, we have a bit of inflation in the market scenario.
Thank you, Christoph. Here's a question for you, Joachim, now. How is SAP addressing this move to composable architecture? How will this stay relevant?
Yeah, it's not. It won't be S/4HANA. S/4HANA is just an ERP solution. It's not distinguishes companies not from others if they are doing a very good ERP or very good financial and controlling business processes. It's for SAP, from the SAP point of view, it's BTP. In my opinion, it will be BTP to stay relevant, because BTP can act as an integration layer, not only for SAP solutions, but also for solutions from third parties, for solutions that are custom specific developed and so on. And BTP provides user companies on the one hand side this integration layer, but also with a common security layer, with a common business process integration layer, with a common data model, and so on. So this is the bet of SAP. They are betting on BTP, and it's interesting to see how or if they will succeed. I'm pretty much sure that they will succeed, or that I'm not pretty much sure, but it's likely that they succeed within the SAP community, but I don't see the BTP to be integrated in a non-SAP environment. So I think the answer is BTP, and if it works or not, we will see in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
Thank you, Joachim. We have one more question for Frank. It was asked if it was the expected impact of Gen AI on different functions, an SAP view of a general view.
It was a general view, but it works for SAP as well because they are mainly in, well, more or less everything in the business function there. But it was not an SAP specific view, but a general view on the expected impact of Gen AI.
Thank you, Frank. So I think we have an overall question. It was asked if the SAP market is going to grow over the IT services market until 2024. If you could say it will be overall growing.
Clearly, if you remember, so if you go back to the slide, I guess 4, where we see the growth for the total market. So we expect growth in the IT services market this year, around 4%. You could say 4% in North America, 3.5% in Europe. So if we look even at the application services market, which is closer to SAP, so we are in a similar range, so around 4%. As I said before, the SAP services market is growing by nearly 10%. So some segments even faster. The pure consulting implementation would be rather 2-digit. You have still some segments like hosting, which are not growing. So, but overall, the SAP services market is growing approximately 2-digit this year. So clearly much faster than the total market.
Thank you, Christoph. So I think we are a little bit over time already.
There's one question I see that goes pretty fast on Gen AI software engineering, productivity increases. Looking at software engineering, it's roughly around 30% expected. There's a lot of time saving into testing there, and of course, if you have this general figure, it's always an average, but right now it's around 30% to be expected into software engineering, and then it has to be divided into different pieces of it. I think I wrote something on that's to be found on SITSI around software and testing and the influence on Gen AI.
All right. If any of you have any more questions, you can always contact us directly. And so I think our webinar is coming to an end. I want to again thank all the speakers for your updates, and I want to thank all of the participants that you took out the time to participate. And we hope to see you very soon at our next webinar hosted by PAC. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, everyone.